Okay, hey guys. So I'm Mike. That's Alexey, and today we are to talk about tools and how that specifically relates to React Native. But before we start, let us introduce ourselves. Um, I'm Mike, and I'm a full stack developer, mainly working from Poland, doing some stuff with React Native in the open source at full time at my job as well. And I work with the Alexey in the open source on a couple of projects.
Yeah, well, guys, as you can guess, I guess, I'm Alexey. So I'm a software engineer based here in Amsterdam, and I'm working in Publitas. It's a software company here as a front-end developer by day and contributing some awesome React Native related projects by night. So that's it. I think, Mike, you can start.
Okay, thanks. So we chose React Native tooling as a topic for our talk today because React Native itself is pretty much a new technology, and we still experience a gap between what we have and what we can use and what we as a developers kind of expect from the ecosystem to have. And first thing you may ask is why tooling is important, like why we are even like going to talk about it today. That's one of the key factors that make languages and frameworks go mainstream. Like, think, for example, about Meteor and its powerful ecosystem. They even used to have their own NPM-like system for package management. Or things like Java, IDEs, syntax highlighting, importing paths, and all this stuff. So that's important, and that's why it matters. But obviously, tooling itself is a pretty broad topic that we won't probably be able to cover in like 20 minutes. So instead, today we are only going to talk about the small part of this topic, which is dependencies, and how dependencies like how this actually relates to React Native. React Native is mainly a JS framework, and most of our JS apps are mainly made from third-party dependencies we install and our own business logic that lives in the source. And for the dependencies, we use npm to get them and use basically. So today, for the sake of presenting the problem we are going to solve, we will try to build a simple React Native app. And you guys probably all are using Discord or Slack, you're on Reactive Flux, so you know what the side menu, hamburger icon, and all that stuff is. So we'll try to build an app that has a side menu you can open and some items you can scroll. So to start with, we'll just basically use React Native init, which is a built-in command that ships with React Native and sets up a full architecture for you with all the folders that you can just open and run the app without any extra things. So as I already said, we use npm. So we can either write our own side menu or we can obviously get it from npm. So for the sake of this talk, we'll use the React Native side menu component, which is, by the way, made by Alexey. And then we'll going to import it and just using the code, which is pretty much what we do with React all the time. And we are ready to go. So that's probably what you would have seen if you just turn on the simulator and refresh the app. As you can see on the left side, there is the side menu, and on the right side, there was supposed to be content, but the difference in backgrounds is just too small. Anyway, as you can see, there is no icon. So the only way to open the menu now is to just slide it. But how about adding an icon? We can obviously use a third-party module from npm again, which is pretty cool for these things. And it's called React Native Vector Icons. And what it does is allows you to use fonts in a similar way to using fonts in web. So you can just install it, import an icon component, and use it in the app to just kind of display, I don't know, a menu button or a star, up to you. So you refresh the app, and what you see is a red screen. And the question is why? Because we just did follow the same steps, like we just npm install, import, like nothing really changed. And the error message is unrecognized font family, font awesome. But what does that even tell me? Because I mean, I didn't use this font in my app. Like I have no idea where's that coming from. Maybe it's from Node modules. So good luck with finding this. So yeah, I believe Alexey might have a good explanation like how that relates to our code base.
Can we? Yeah. Okay. Awesome. So the point is that before I can explain this, we need to unify our vision about React Native models, because some of the React Native models are actually more complex than just the JavaScript ones. And I know there's a bit blurry explanation, so let me just try to explain myself. This is a JavaScript model, and yeah, I hope you can see this text, but never mind. This is a JavaScript model. It can be actually any of your favorite libraries, Slowdash or whatever. The point is that it's just a JavaScript, plain JavaScript. And this is a React Native model. So as you can see, React Native model contains a JavaScript part, but it's also not scoped by it. So literally, React Native model contains way more things. And to explain it even further, I think we need to take a look how React Native model structured under the hood. So the first part is obviously JavaScript. Well, it's React Native all in all. So JavaScript, yeah, I don't think we need to go really further with JavaScript. I can just tell you that we use it as an interface to our system, and we can use it as an actual model, because some of React Native models contains only from the JavaScript part. So, for example, Mike made a nice sample with React Native side menu. So React Native side menu is a good example of pure JavaScript model. So it doesn't require anything else but just npm install, and we are ready to go. And that's cool. But sometimes we need a bit more. So sometimes we need to consume some platform-specific API. And we can't just do this using JavaScript. I mean, React Native is awesome, but it can't breach all functionality of the native platform just out of box. It's out of scope for it. So that said, React Native team gave us an opportunity to build a third-party models that contains a platform-specific code that actually consumes this platform-specific API and expose it to the JavaScript using a bridge. I think if you haven't missed the to-do talk, he explained it pretty well. So as an example, we can use React Native Camera, because React Native out of box doesn't provide you any hooks for using camera in your applications. Because, well, it's pretty common to use camera, so I think it would be a good example. Camera model contains actually these two parts: JavaScript interface and then platform code. So platform code, do nothing else but just use the API and export it to JavaScript. That's how it works. Pretty simple, I think. And yeah, the final part of the structure would be assets. So assets is pretty much, well, it can be everything. From icons to, I don't know, videos, audio files, whatever. And again, if you remember Mike's example, we were talking about React Native vector icons, and I think we can consider it as an example here. So React Native vector icons contains all these three parts: JavaScript interface, platform-specific code, and assets. And assets in our case would be vector fonts. And vector fonts are just a presets that we actually can use when we install React Native vector icons library. But yeah, why I'm telling you this? That's because now we can draw a line between React Native model and the JavaScript models. So why we need it? Because when we're using npm, we actually linking and installing, well, okay, we're installing the whole model, we're downloading it from the package registry, npm package registry, but then we resolve dependencies only for the JavaScript. And that's actually all that we need for the JavaScript part. But what about these two parts? This platform code on native models and assets, we don't do anything about it, but they are actually need to be linked or installed, whatever you prefer. And, well, we just don't do anything with this. So what we actually have to do, we need to link or install them manually. I mean, at least for now. And, you know, I'm not that good in linking this stuff and native development. So I think Mike can tell us how to do this now.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, so as Alexey said, these parts require some post-processing. And if you guys have like ever written any Objective-C or Swift, you probably recognize this picture. This is beautiful Xcode that you will be using if you will end up working with React Native. And like in this case, this is actually a picture from Facebook Docs, and I've just realized you can't actually read anything, but we'll handle that. So basically, whenever you get a native dependency from npm, or it can be like Alexey said, JS and a native module, right? Like vector icons or camera, or it can be fully native dependency, like I don't know. You can find some iOS components as well. There's usually an Xcode project in these folders. Think of it as a package.json. And in order to tell Xcode that we are going to use some native code, we have to locate this Xcode project. In this case, it's located under Node modules, React Native libraries, push notifications, iOS. So once you locate this project, you have to drag it and drop it to your Xcode sidebar, RCT push notifications. As you can see, we just put under libraries. And once you are done with this, the next step is to go through some crazy steps in Xcode and locate build phases. And then you have to add a product of that library to your build phases. In this case, it's linked binary with libraries. And we are just going to add lib rct push notifications.a, which stands for a static library. So these are all the things you have to do, and some of them are pretty complicated, and it's quite hard to understand them pretty well if you have never made any iOS development before. And that's not everything you have to do, because next, after that, you have to, just like we import some JS code from Node modules by writing import A from A, and then we can use it. You have to do the same steps with Objective-C and iOS development, and you have to tell Xcode where to look for your files when you are kind of importing them. So if you are telling Xcode import push notifications, you have to explicitly define the paths where it can look for. So think of it like defining all the possible places for Node modules in your code base. Obviously, we have only one, but that's just demonstrating the case. So this is pretty much like all the things you have to do in order to install like a super small module just to test it out. And yeah, I'm really curious, like what you think, Alexey, about it.
Well, to be honest, that's pretty awkward experience in my opinion. And the funny part is that this picture actually makes it even more awkward because we already saw it today. And yeah, I actually never developed a native application before React Native. I mean, mobile application before React Native. And for me, it's pretty new experience. And what just Mike said, this took me something like 30 minutes to figure out how to do it for the first time. And we don't even take into account Android part. And now Microsoft have a fork of React Native. So maybe universal Windows platform goes, well, pretty soon, and Tizen of Samsung. So it goes really crazy. So if you have 4 platforms and we will do this manually, I don't know when I will write an application logic actually. So that's actually was an initial purpose of creating RNPM. So RNPM is a React Native package manager. It's a tool that intended to kind of bridge the gap between actual community needs and the problems that we have nowadays around managing dependencies. So, enough of theoretical stuff, I think. We already have an example that was broken. I mean, it was a red screen. So let's figure out if RNPM can actually solve this problem. So we have pretty much the same signature as with npm. So we just run npm install name of the model, under the hood, it uses npm to download the package from the registry and resolve its JavaScript dependencies. And then we have some fancy output from the RNPM itself. So basically, these lines tells you that everything is fine, that your library is linked, and it works for Android and iOS nowadays. So instead of wasting your time, I don't know, maybe if you experience with this, it will take you something like 10 minutes for both platforms. Instead of this, you can just run a command and have it in, I don't know, 30 seconds or so. So I don't know what you think, but I personally think that it's like a magic. And, you know, that said, I think you pretty much experienced with RNPM already. But we need to go further and tell you a bit more about an actual RNPM features. And I think Mike would be the best person for this.
Yeah. So you now know what RNPM basically is. So it's time to dive into the core features we have. Basically, RNPM was built by developers, and we actually were aiming to build it for developers so that everyone uses it and everyone likes it. So the most important feature that we wanted to ship from the day one, the most vital feature of the RNPM, was the high adoption, because we didn't want to make yet another tool that you will have to set up, yet another RC file you will have to put, and all that hassle. We wanted to make a tool that you can just install and use, and we have discovered that this is only possible to achieve if these 2 points are present at the same time. Basically, the first point is no config is required, which means you can just npm install RNPM and you can start using it. You don't have to think about anything. We are trying to somehow understand your code base as much as possible so that you can always use it in every project. And the second point is code base agnostic. In mobile development, especially native development, it's like you have plenty of different folders, and the structure of folder and applications can vary from project to project. So it's not always that you have Android and iOS folders like you have when you run RNPM in it. And what we wanted to do is we wanted to make sure RNPM will work in this case, because, for example, I had a different non-standard architecture, and I was unable to use React Native comments for a couple of months. We have fixed that. I mean, it was fixed recently, so now I can. But it was a case back in a day, so we wanted to make sure this is not going to happen again. Another feature that we have are plugins, because we wanted RNPM itself as a core to be small and stable and unit tested, so that we can focus on features and not fixing bugs. Because RNPM is probably this kind of tool that when you are using and it will fail, you'll never use it again. So we wanted to make it somehow stable so that you can fall in love with it. And that's why we ship only with a few comments by default. And you can actually, the video has started. So we can actually RNPM help to get a list of installed comments. In this case, it's just install, link, and unlink. And now say, like in my project, I'm doing some over-the-air updates using AppHook. So I'm just going to install a plugin from npm, which is RNPM plugin AppHook, and I'm going to save it to my package dependencies so that this plugin is available in my package. And by the way, once it's finished, we can just run RNPM help again, as in this case, to see the list of commands that we will get. Okay, and we get the AppHook and the description, so we have now just installed an extension from npm, so we can adjust RNPM to your needs. For those who have never used React Native, AppHook is a service that allows you to update your application without going through the reviews in the iTunes, the App Store, and Google Play. So you can just ship your native code once, and then you can just send the over-the-air update to your users. The similar solution is React Native Code Push, which is open source implementation made by Microsoft. Another feature we have are the parameters. Because sometimes after you are done with installing a module and you would probably like to run your app, you realize you have to do some post-installing things like, you have to set up a token. Like in this case, I have installed the Google Analytics package for React Native that allows me to send Google Analytics events. And they require me to set up a token. And for example, the second package, which is add package, requires me to provide an instance of activity, which is in this context this. This is a small snippet from main activity Java file from Android development, and that's the method that should return an array of the packages, native packages that your code is using. So if you remember that blue circle from Alexey's slides, that's exactly the line where you have to define this package. So obviously, it's simple because you can just open your editor, you can find these things, you can edit these things, and it's going to work. However, RNPM also has a solution for this, because in this case, we are just going to install the React Native code push, and Microsoft guys decided to ask you for the deployment key for Android. So we just entered my awesome token, and as you can see, it's available, and we have inserted it directly to the constructor, so we don't have to do it manually. And that has lots of benefits, because obviously that's the preview we made last week, so it inserted a plain string, but we are currently working on persisting these settings elsewhere, so you don't have to keep your config in files. You can have like settings JSON, or I don't know, something like that. Usually you would make something similar in normal development, so we are moving towards this solution. And another feature we have is unlink. When you start doing your app, I don't know, like let's say we just started that demo app with side menu. There are like 100 of components you can use, which is not a surprise because usually there are like millions of NPM components you can use. So what you want to do is you want to test them out. You want to see which one is better and better fits your case. So now imagine doing all these slow steps, linking, and then repeating these steps in backwards order, which means you have to remove these things. It's quite error prone because you can delete too much, you can skip some things, so you will end up with some dead code, which is not something that we should have in the ecosystem for these kind of things. So there is similar comment, and it actually works in the reverse order. We are just going to unlink the code push that we have linked in the previous example. And as you can see, we get some output saying, okay, everything was cool. And the div, it doesn't have any code push related things. It has some unrelated div changes, which are due to some underlying internal libraries we are using in our NPM. But it's not something that actually affects your code. So you can safely install plugins with RNPM, uninstall them, and then you can be pretty sure everything works properly. So good question is, what's next? Like, when we were preparing with Alexey for the talk, we thought like, yeah, let's make a bunch of features so we have some slides and we can tell people that RNPM is cool. And turns out we made them all, which was quite surprising. But yeah, so we had quite a few troubles with thinking what to put next in these slides. But I know Alexey did find something, and he will probably tell us now what's yet to come.
Yep, sure. So we actually have two big things in our pipeline about our NPM. So the first one is about managing dependencies of the native models. We have NPM that manages dependencies of our JavaScript part of the React Native models, but we don't have anything that manages native dependencies for the native models. So literally, if you have some library that require you to install some other, I don't know, C or Java library, then, well, you need to do it manually now. And what we're working on is literally making it, well, including managing these native models under the hood of the RNPM link command. So that's one thingy. And the second one is actually a bit more about the tool itself. Because now if you're a React Native developer, then you have to use at least two tools. You have to use npm for downloading your packages and React Native command line to run your application, to scaffold your applications and do some bunch of stuff. So, and now we're basically proposing you to use the third tool. And, this flow actually sucks in my opinion. Because, come on, we have one technology and three tools around it. Oh, it's ridiculous. I actually don't like this approach. I'd like to see that, RNPM would be part of one of these tools. And I actually see that for the npm, it would be definitely out of scope. But for React Native Command Line 2, it can be valuable. And I'm pretty excited to tell you that some guys from the React Native team actually thinks the same. And now we are working on merging our npm into React Native Command Line 2 to actually bring you even more delightful experience with React Native. Because you would be able to do all the things that we just explained out of box with React Native Command Line tool, and in my opinion, that's just cool. So, yeah, guys, I think that's it. Thank you.
That's fantastic. We have a few minutes to questions. There's an immediate one here. I come here with the mic.
Yeah, one question. Getting those plugins, how much work is it extra for those plugin manufacturers? So
yeah, so you mean how long does it take to build such plugin, right?
how much work, that add-in you shown, how much extra configuration and work is it to get that context? For NPM, you have to fill in JSON,
yes,
configure, have files, to specify all what it does automatically.
Yes, well, yeah, so we have similar thing, but the plugins are actually following the naming pattern. So you have to save that plugin so that it's in your package JSON dependencies, and then that plugin has to be RMPM plugin, and we will automatically detect it during the runtime and automatically display it. So it happens every time you run the RMPM, and we detect the number of plugins depending on the current working directory. So if you are running RMPM from root of your project, that package JSON has to have these plugins added to the package JSON. We obviously also support global plugins, but this is getting deprecated, so it doesn't matter. So yes, you have to have it in the package JSON at the current working directory level, so it's discoverable.
Yeah, just my 5 cents to this. I mean, you have pretty much the same flow with every JavaScript package, right, Mike? So, I mean, you anyway have to specify your dependency in the package JSON. So,
yeah, so it's kind of like, yeah, I depend on this plugin, and we are kind of clever enough to find it for you. No. No, you just have to have it in the package JSON, and that's all. Because actually, the way this works is plugin can't be either iOS or Android only. That filtering logic needs to happen inside the plugin itself. So it does mean that, for example, if I make a plugin, let's say build iOS, it will get executed inside Android project, and it's my responsibility to just return false or something like that.
Yeah, but which header files and all that kind of stuff is automatically detected then?
Yes.
The specification of the header files and all that?
Yes. So that happens in RMPM itself. When the RMPM CLI starts up, we kind of analyze, we have divided this process into 2 steps. One step is the iOS detection, where we find the project and all that stuff, headers. And when the Android part starts up, we do stuff like we find the Gradle files, we find Android manifest XML, and things like resources, values XML, all these things. So you can just build the plugin, and you can just get everything from the config. So you don't have to think about like structure or about how to detect project. We give you values, and it's pretty much up to you what you're gonna do with these values.
Okay, cool.
Somebody else there?
Yeah, so I've used RMPM. It's awesome. Good job.
We have some stickers for you.
yeah, thanks.
Awesome. One thing that I've noticed from being like a native developer is messing around with Xcode projects and Android projects is like, it's very fragile and messy. And I've noticed that with even React Native already, if you're upgrading, they kind of do a dumb approach of like kind of nuking everything and rebuilding everything again. So it's kind of dumb. So I'm wondering if you're now merging with this. So are you thinking of like somehow doing some magic there so the existing project doesn't break? Or are you going to do anything special, or are you going to continue being the dumb thing? So if you upgrade, you have to relink everything. And I don't mean that in a bad way, like Xcode projects is horrible. It's the dumb approach is fine. But yeah. If you do any custom work on your Xcode project, it just gets nuked and you have to do it again yourself.
Yeah, you know, it's actually a good project, but I think we would be definitely out of time if we will start discussing this. So I think we can just catch up after the talk and discuss the thingy.
Yes, there will be time at the after party.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think we're good with time. So thank you very much, guys. Please give them a big round of applause. Thank you.